We're talking running backs on today's Peacock and Williamson rookie stock report, who we buying entering the NFL, running back rankings, and who's going to break out in 2024. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Tag us on Twitter. That is the best place to get involved in our Wednesday mailbag on tomorrow's episode. You can also drop a question on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed while you're there. And of course, you can find us everywhere you find your podcast and subscribe there. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's talk running backs, Matt.
Yeah.
We teased it yesterday. We looked at wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, rookie ADPs for dynasty leagues, and then it's a good barometer of how how people think careers are going to go before we've even seen these players on the field yet. And the running back position is changing kind of every single year. I feel like are running backs making a little bit of a comeback, Matt?
That's a great question. I mean,
drafted super high this year. There were two first-round running backs last year, but this offseason we saw a few more guys getting paid. We haven't seen the growth in the top of the market, but at least there was some bigger contracts divvied out at running back this offseason.
Yeah, and I don't like to get ahead of myself, but I was just happened to be listening to a podcast yesterday about next year's running back class. It's supposed to be awesome. So this year was a down one. Next year will be a good barometer. Might we get two more in the first round? Something like that, I think, would be telling. And you're right. Running backs made some money, this offseason. But maybe even more importantly, the Jacobs and Barkleys and Henrys, and they signed like a minute after free agency opened. It was obviously these teams' priority to go upgrade and get an established star, so I do think that's telling. I think that's good if you're a running back.
And we're going to talk a little bit later about bell cows and take a peek at PFF's running back rankings, what we agree with, what we don't, and and some breakouts as well. It is getting to the point, we've talked about this a lot with the tight end position, Matt, is it's one of the best values in the league because of how much they do if you have a great tight end, yet their top of the market salaries are a little bit suppressed compared to where wide receivers are going right now, and some of the crazy money is out there for, say, guards and things. And I guess running back has probably gotten to the point where the market corrected to where it was supposed to be so much that maybe it's gone in the other direction. And if you have a superstar running back like Christian McCaffrey and his $14 million per year, I'd probably rather pay that still than you pay two of those. You could pay a star tight end and a star running back for the cost of one wide receiver right now.
Yeah, let's stick with this just for a second before we get back to the rookies, because you mentioned guards. I mean, I think that was another theme of the offseason is free agent guards that are good, not great. Quality starters got a lot more than I expected, and centers weren't far behind. And I do think the league, free agency told us this, that if you're going to play a ton of too high and take away the big plays, we're going to bludgeon you with Derrick Henry or the Rams moving Avila to guard for center and just having a lot of beef up the middle, So I do think that's a zig when teams zag. But as anyone who's listened to you knows, you're not a running back in round one guy at all. As strong as people I talk to regularly, you're about as far that direction as anyone. But you're also a Niner guy. And you mentioned McCaffrey. Do you have any problem whatsoever from a Niner perspective with what they paid for McCaffrey and his contract, combination? Because he's different.
I don't like the combination of both because you're paying quite a bit, and there's multiple aspects to the running backs don't matter movement. And number one is attrition. So running backs get hurt, right? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And then
and McCaffrey has 2 over his career. He's not different that way.
But then hasn't since he's been on the 49ers.
Right.
Nobody touched the ball more than 49ers version of Christian McCaffrey. So he's been extremely valuable for the team. So when you look at what they traded to get him, it's not a big deal. And now he's making, $14 million a year on top of it. So you trade for him, and you have to pay him. So you're paying a lot for a running back that his next carry could be his last, right? But he stayed healthy so far, so it has worked out. That doesn't mean I'm just going to keep buying every running back. It just means
that was my next question.
In this case, and he's a little bit of a special case where he's so good in the passing game. It's more valuable than just being a traditional bell cow, 2-down sort of a running back. If you can be dynamic and make a difference in the passing game, you're more valuable already. And the other thing is, I wouldn't expect him to play another 20 games without getting hurt. So that worries the 49ers this year if you start getting too running back centric. And then on top of that, the replacement level at running back is so high. Are the 49ers, just staying on the McCaffrey example, will a Kyle Shanahan 49ers offense all of a sudden not be able to run the ball because they don't have Christian McCaffrey?
I'm sure they
probably run the ball fine. And it might be Jordan Mason, who was undrafted and is basically free because he's averaging 6 yards per carry in his NFL career. And so did, Alfred Morris.
We would all pick up Jordan Mason if he became the starter and start him the next week.
Or Elijah Mitchell, or rookie Isaac Garendo, the 4th round pick. And we've seen it with Shanahan offenses with going all the way back to his dad's offense in Denver, Olandis Gary's and Alfred Morris's and Steve Slayton's. And, it's not like Kyle Shanahan offenses couldn't run the ball until Christian McCaffrey showed up. He does all the extras where his value is.
Yes.
And just really admire the way he plays. He's really fun to watch. Like every yard matters and he knows where to be. Like he is a great player. Can he stay healthy and then his value will be fine. And what you're paying him for is fine. But we're talking short term, and we're talking a player that is awesome and is a unique player and isn't instructing us to let's keep doing that because he's in a category by himself over here. It's like this one worked out, pay a lot for this. That doesn't mean you should always pay a lot for that position. Pay a lot just for him specifically.
I don't mean to monopolize the whole show with this conversation, but I do have one follow-up question. Hypothetical. McCaffrey has an awesome year, leads the league in all-purpose yards. He lives up to being the first pick in fantasy. The Niners end up picking 32, win the Super Bowl. He's awesome. He's instrumental. And then he says, I'm done with football. I'm going to retire. And Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, all those GMs call the Niners and be like, would you give us the 32nd pick for our running back to replace McCaffrey? Does Brian Peacock say yay or nay?
I would say nay.
Okay.
Because you can find a guy. If you think it's special, then you do it. Maybe. But the 49ers seasons ended the exact same way they did the years prior with Christian McCaffrey. They can still lose the NFC Championship game and still lose the Super Bowl with Christian McCaffrey, just like they were before Christian McCaffrey showed up too. So how much of a difference is that running back making, and how much ground and what's the delta between that running back? And we're talking about the best running back in the league. I'm not even talking about paying somebody else either. So the best running back in the entire league versus undrafted guy, it's still not that big of a gap, right?
It's not
as awesome as Christian McCaffrey is. I would much rather play a season without Christian McCaffrey than play a season without Nick Bosa, or play a season without Trent Williams, or play a season without Brock Purdy.
Yeah, that delta still might be the smallest in any position. I mean, kickers aside and punters aside, things like that. But Kelsey in his prime versus undrafted replacement level tight end isn't even close.
I mean, we saw it with the Kansas City Chiefs as a perfect example.
Yeah.
They drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the 32nd pick in the draft. And who was better? The 7th round running back that they drafted the next year. So, and Pacheco ends up being the guy there. So anyway, running back stock report around the NFL, making a little bit of a comeback, but I think the market has corrected to the point where maybe they're just properly rated now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
What they cost is the right amount now. They used to cost too much. Maybe they cost the right amount now in the NFL. Let's talk about the rookies, who we like, potential breakouts, and are there even any bell cow backs left in the NFL? We've talked about one of them. There's not many more. Next.
Not many more.
This episode of Peacock Williamson is sponsored by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier because prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. We're talking killer last-minute deals at Game Time. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, any events near you that you need tickets for. And I love the all-in pricing. You can toggle on the all-in pricing feature, which shows the total upfront so you don't get hit with all those surprise fees at checkout. It's my least favorite part of buying tickets. See those prices up front so you know you're getting a great deal in advance with Game Time. You can see the views from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at your event. Couple of taps, it's right there on the app. You don't have to go fishing through your email when you arrive at your event. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, incoming class of rookies, Matt. There was no first rounders this year. There was one second rounder, and not surprisingly, that second rounder, Jonathon Brooks of the Carolina Panthers, leads dynasty rookie draft ADP, and we're kind of looking at that rookie stock here entering the league with the dynasty folks out there and where these players are being drafted. And right now, Jonathon Brooks is the 13th highest drafted running back in startup dynasty leagues, and he is the first rookie running back being drafted right now. Do you have any big thoughts on Jonathon Brooks? Is he going to land on Williamson's fantasy rosters? How do you like him long term? Because he comes in the league with an injury. I don't feel like the Carolina Panthers necessarily got that discount though with where they drafted him and and this is a perfect example where the Panthers are in their build is running back the important thing for them to have. Because if you go back to Christian McCaffrey, people weren't playing the Panthers and like, man, we can't beat the Carolina Panthers because they have Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
You know what I mean? He goes to the Niners. It's like, oh my God, this guy's a problem. He was still getting yards and putting up production when he was with the Panthers, but they weren't winning all that many games with him. Does Jonathon Brooks make a difference for the Panthers? And how do you like him entering the league for his NFL career?
As a rule of thumb lately, I don't really like what the Panthers do in terms of team building or anything about their, I wouldn't build a football team the way they do pretty much every day of the week. That being said, and trading up for a running back and with your, early in the draft, second round is another example of not liking what the Panthers do. But I do think for dynasty reasons, the fact that they did, I'm going to defer to them on the injury. They must feel really, really comfortable about the injury, or they wouldn't have done that. And they at least have doctors. I'm just reading stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
So again, that's not a move I would make. But I've been on record many times saying that if I were to invest in a running back or overspend on one or overdraft one, it would be when I have a very young quarterback or I'm preparing for a very young quarterback. And he would have to be a pass catcher. And it'd have to have some size. And I think Brooks has all those things. Like I'm not trading up for Darren Sproles just because he's a good receiver. Yeah. You need to touch the ball a lot. Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, those type of dudes. And I think Brooks is in that neighborhood. I have no problem selecting him in Dynasty where he's going, if not earlier. There's obviously those top three receivers, but I think he's right there with Worthy, McConkey, Thomas, and I might prefer him to all those guys. And my last note on this is I think Carolina's O-line is now respectable. And if you look at Canales' history, he throws the ball to running backs a lot. Like I didn't think Rachaad White's a great player. He's not going to be top of the running back list for Pro Football Focus, but for fantasy, he gets the rock in space. And that's I think that's going to be Brooks.
That's a really good point. Yeah. He made him more viable player White, than he was previously. So that's Jonathon Brooks. The next running back up is Trey Benson, Arizona Cardinals back. He's a couple of rounds later looking at ADP in these startup dynasty drafts. And I kind of like the value there. Trey Benson might be the guy I'm buying this year in fantasy. He's obviously got, a guy in front of him, but how big of a hurdle is that? Probably not long-term, but maybe not even that much short-term, depending on how things go for Connor there in Arizona.
100%. And I don't love Benson, but he's big and he's fast and he's in a pretty good situation and they've invested in linemen and I think their offense will be respectable and everyone knows Connor's injury history, but to his credit, really since he left the Steelers, he hasn't been as banged up. I mean, he hasn't, but he's old now. I mean, he's part of that same class as like Kamara and McCaffrey, that famous running back class. So
the famous old running back class where they're all in their 20s still.
right. So I think Benson will be the starter before long. And in the dynasty world, Brooks is in his own tier, Benson's in his own tier, and then there's like 4 or 5 others that depends what flavor of ice cream you like, you know.
What flavor of ice cream do you like? Because next up, ADP, and there is a big gap after Trey Benson. It goes Blake Corum of the Rams, Jalen Wright, Miami Dolphins, Marshawn Lloyd, Green Bay Packers, all in a row. And
yeah,
then
they're kind of the group. I was thinking there's more than that, but yeah, it's really those 3. I think Wright is a Mostert direct replacement, kind of like we just talked about in Arizona. It might have to wait a year. I don't think he is infringing on Achane. Lloyd could be the starter next year because I think A.J. Dillon's bad, to be honest with you. And I think Jacobs is really just a 1-year deal. So Lloyd could be the starter. But I guess there's some sort of Kyren Williams injury OTA thing too. So Corum's been spiking.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of similarities to Williams, but I still think he's my 3rd pick of those 3.
5'7", 205.
5'7",
short legs, that contact balance. Corum's an interesting one because he's not super dynamic, but it depends on what the share looks like at running back there. These are all like, you're looking at a committee, you're looking at true backups. I think there's a path for Corum to play with Kyren Williams, even if Kyren Williams is healthy, more so than Jalen Wright might just be like, look, you're the replacement here, but if the other guy's healthy, he's going to play until he's not, then you're going to play, right? And Marshawn Lloyd, just might not see the field that much and catch a few passes, and that's about it with what's in front of him at Green Bay. But long term, maybe he's a good play and maybe a higher upside play than Corum. But yeah, if Kyren Williams is already banged up a little bit and not the biggest guy anyway, Corum feels like the play here from a fantasy perspective, but I might rather have Wright or Lloyd, in 2025 or 2026.
Yeah, agreed. Like if we're redrafting, I probably would take Corum, especially with the Williams injury already looming. That's a long way away from opening day. And I'm not predicting this, folks. Like I don't need Miami and Green Bay people, atting me or whatever the cool term is. But there's a chance Wright and Lloyd are inactive to start the season. If they're 3rd on the depth chart, they're not great in protection. They're not going to help on special teams. Like they're a little ways away from being usable.
Stylistically, the thing I love and the thing I hate about Jalen Wright is he's a perfect stylistic match for what they're doing, but there's already 2 guys like him. So where's your path to playing time? Where's your role? If everybody's healthy, and we know they're not going to be healthy. So Jalen Wright's going to get some run. It's just a matter of kind of when probably for him.
I just think he's Mostert's direct replacement whenever that time comes, and Mostert's like the oldest running back in the league. But he had a great year, so he's not fading away real soon.
Next up, another little gap before Ray Davis of the Buffalo Bills. You got Kamani Vidal from the Chargers, pretty far down the list here. And I think that's where you start to get in kind of bargain territory, where you start looking at these running backs and you say, well, man, this guy might be just as close to playing as some of the guys that are, being taken earlier.
Especially like a Tyrone Tracy with the Giants. Like there's nothing in front of that guy. I mean, he might not be any, capable in protection and things like that, but there's not much competition. I do like Ray Davis. I think his landing spot's okay, not great. Josh Allen's going to vulture a lot of touchdowns. My favorite name for sure is Vidal with the Chargers. We know they're going to be super run heavy. If you look at J.K. Dobbins' contract, it really implies that they don't count on him at all. Like he got very, very little money, which means to me that he's probably a long way from being healthy. And Gus Bus in front of you is the only guy that's, an obstacle. If that's true, that's not much at all on a run heavy team with a good line. And I liked Vidal a lot coming out.
I mean, that's where I dive in. If we're talking fantasy drafts, is like, okay, the Kamani Vidal, you've got Audric Estime as well, with Tyler.
I kind of like that one too, because Javonte Williams is up after this year.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh, cool. I got a starting running back in week 6.
Yeah. I mean, he's a pounder. He could be a lot like Gus Edwards,
Going down here in the top 200 ADP for dynasty startups, 186 is Isaac Guerendo, who's after all those guys because it's a little bit blocked there in San Francisco, not only because of Christian McCaffrey, who, by the way, never leaves the field for the 49ers.
Yeah.
And then you got you got Mitchell, you've got Jordan Mason, who I really like that we talked about. And then there's the undrafted guy the 49ers brought in as well, Cody Schrader, who's had a phenomenal career and really a better college career than Isaac Guerendo. Isaac Guerendo started one game in college, but he's 6 feet tall with weighing 221 pounds and ran 4.33. So Guerendo is one of those where it's like, I don't know what to do with him. I'm just going to kind of like wait and see. But I think there is, he's a former receiver, has nice hands, maybe a passing down role for him, but it's not going to exist while Christian McCaffrey's healthy. So
yeah,
something catastrophic in San Francisco for Isaac Guerendo to really have any value for you in the short term.
And that's the case with a lot of this neighborhood. I mean, for people that don't play Dynasty, you probably don't care. But, I mean, like in the 4th round of Dynasty drafts, when there's 40 guys off the board or 35 guys off the board, throwing a dart at one of these running backs is not a bad idea because, as you started the show, people get hurt, and Will Shipley could be the Eagles starting running back in week 12. Who knows?
Yeah, I mentioned Will Shipley. He's right here ahead of Isaac Guerendo there. And yeah, it's just, you're just taking flyers on guys. And these guys can compete and can't play. Like a rookie 6th rounder at a lot of positions probably doesn't have much of an opportunity. A rookie 6th round running back might be a superstar and win you your fantasy league in November.
Happens all the time. Right?
Yeah.
Pick up these, they have fresh legs. They've hardly played. They haven't taken the beating everybody else does. They understand the speed of the game. Week 12 and all the way through the fantasy Super Bowl, you're starting them and you pick them up off waiver wires,
Let's take a peek at PFF's running back rankings in the NFL now that we've looked at the rookie class a little bit, and Matt Williamson's favorite breakout running back next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. And we're talking about big wins. All you got to do is win your first $5 bet, and new customers of FanDuel will get $150 extra in bonus bets. That's right, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And all you got to do is win your first $5 bet when you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Of course, not just NBA and NHL playoffs. You got Major League Baseball every day and tons of NFL futures as well. You want to bet on one of those running backs to be offensive rookie of the year? You can find those odds at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so taking a peek at, and you got to go to PFF to see the full list here, but I'm going to go through some of these really quick, and it's no surprise Christian McCaffrey's #1 on their list. The rest of the top 5, though, what do you think? Derrick Henry is still the second best running back in the NFL, Matt. #3 is Jonathan Taylor of the Colts. I'm really interested to see what Henry looks like on the Baltimore Ravens, by the way. Nick Chubb, what will he look like coming off another injury? Cleveland Browns running back #4, and Bijan Robinson rounds out the top 5 with Saquon Barkley coming in at #6 on this list. Matt, how do you like this at the top?
I don't know who the clear 2 is, and I've been expecting Henry to fall off a cliff forever, and I thought he was great last year. I thought he had some of the worst blocking in the league, but was really, really good after first contact, and I think Baltimore still is going to get a ton out of the guy. I don't think he'd be 2 for me, though, just because he's only a runner. He just offers so little in the passing game. But Nick Chubb, similar. And if he were 100% healthy, which I couldn't put Chubb at 2, I would put Chubb over Henry as the best pure ball carriers, workhorse runners in the league, if that was its own category.
The next guy up's the most interesting to me at #7. If I had to put money on who will be top 2 on this list next year, I would put Breece Hall of the New York Jets, and he looked awesome coming off he had that ACL his rookie year. He looked awesome coming off of that last year once he came back, and then now you have that full year, 12 months away from being hurt, and a full season now of Breece Hall. I think he could go crazy this year.
100%. We talked Dynasty a little bit, and Bijan and Hall are 1 and 2 for Dynasty running backs. And I 100% agree with that. I think both those guys could legitimately challenge McCaffrey for the crown, this time next year, because they are bigger. They're hitting their prime. Maybe McCaffrey takes a small step back, but they're both so explosive. They're big time receivers. I think Hall and Bijan are superstars.
Finishing up the top 10 after Breece Hall at number 7 is Aaron Jones with a new squad there in Minnesota. Number 9, Jahmyr Gibbs, second-year player, potential big breakout for him with the Lions in year 2. And then Josh Jacobs, another new face in a new place there for the Green Bay Packers, rounding out the top 10.
I think Aaron Jones is better than Josh Jacobs. And I know he's older, but I never quite understood that swap. You bought some years, but you only have Jacobs basically on a 1-year deal. I would rather play against Jacobs than Jones. And it sounds like Pro Football Focus agrees with me, but the Packers don't.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did they upgrade? What
I don't know.
Changing for the sake of change? That was a strange offseason move, in my opinion.
And I think the Vikes really benefited, though. They're like, if you're going to cut him, I'll take him on the cheap. Like, Aaron Jones can be on my fantasy team this year.
They played him twice a year, and they're like, yeah, you're going to let us have him? Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Not a problem.
Did the Packers get better? They clearly have a plan for the future to exit from Josh Jacobs, drafting Marshawn Lloyd as well, right? So that's interesting. And it's a multi-year contract, but with these running back contracts, while the money has been there for some of these guys, the guarantees is such with the running backs that teams can still get out of those contracts. And so very similar way. Like right now, the Niners have 0 guarantees left on McCaffrey's deal. Not a ton of guarantees, I think, in Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley's deals with their new teams.
And I didn't think Jacobs was that good last year. His environment wasn't great, and there's injuries and stuff, but he's had one big year.
He has. Travis Etienne comes in at number 11. He's kind of become a workhorse a little bit more than I thought. Maybe not super
maybe more
efficient.
Than he should be.
Yeah, exactly. Not super efficient there. Hasn't been kind of the pass catcher that they build him as. They were talking about him being a wide receiver, just completely changing positions coming into the league. That didn't happen for the Jacksonville.
He's not even close to being a wide receiver. Like he's an overrated pass catcher as a running back, and he's fine. I just don't think this neighborhood I don't love of these running backs. You
need usage in this neighborhood. So we're gone from any kind of like Travis Etienne had workhorse usage. I would love to see Kenneth Walker, who comes in number 12, to get workhorse usage. I don't expect that though from the Seattle Seahawks, but new regime there. We'll see how he gets treated there, and he's a really good player. Can he stay healthy if he gets that usage? Is another question altogether. Then you got Raheem Mostert, who's phenomenal when he's healthy and on the field, and has been throughout his career. Tony Pollard comes in at 14, and then Isaac Pacheco, Kyron Williams, James Conner, Devon Achane, Jalen Warren from the Steelers, and DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears round out the top 20.
It's not a super inspiring 10 through 20. Like whenever if they do other positions, I assume that they're doing a series. I would bet 10 through 20 in most positions is more inspiring than Raheem Mostert and James Conner and Kyron Williams and Isaiah Pacheco. And the one that I don't envy them for having to rank, and I've done plenty of lists in my life, is Achane. Like if you put Achane at 6 or 7, I'd be like, I understand. He's scary as could be.
8 yards per carry or whatever.
Right. I don't know where I'd rank him. But
Jalen Warren is the guy as listed here ahead of Najee Harris in Pittsburgh, right?
And I think he's a better football player than Harris, but I think Harris also came off his best year. And I think they kind of wash each other's. They help each other a bit too. Like, I don't think Warren could do what Harris does. Harris definitely couldn't do what Warren does.
Alvin Kamara still Saint. He's 21 on the list.
I don't see it anymore.
James Cook is all the way down here at 24.
That stood out to me as being way too low
in the league in rushing yards last year. And there might be a little bit more in the tank for him, and he can catch the football. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, that one stood out to me. Like, why is he so low? I thought he had a great year and was maybe even a little more bell cow-ish than he should have been. And then they drafted a kid, Davis, this year.
You got to go to pff.com to see the whole list. I want to point out a couple more. And I don't know if you have a favorite breakout this year, Matt. Austin Ekeler, though, all the way down at 29, Washington Commanders. That was kind of an underreported move. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay, Austin Eckler's done, I guess, and with the Chargers, and he's not going to fit with what Harbaugh wants to do. And now he's in Washington with the Commanders. But I feel like he's kind of just getting brushed to the side as an afterthought for how good of a player he's been in his career.
Tend to agree. Like this time last year, I thought Zeke Elliott was garbage, and he was really good for a Patriot offense that had no weapons, and something that we said for great players knowing how to play the game, even if they've lost their fastball. I mentioned Kamara as way too high, and he's another one that's had a great career, and he's still an effective receiver. I thought he was not an effective runner, but Kendre Miller's might be my breakout guy behind him. I'm not even sure if Kamara will be on the team when it's all said and done.
There you go, Kendre Miller.
Yeah,
run to the
go get him.
Yeah, run to your favorite financial expert and buy the stock in Kendre Miller. There. Do you have a favorite? We kind of went through some of those running backs. Is there Williamson's guy with the rookie running backs this year?
Vidal. I mean, I think he's probably my guy. I mean, I don't dislike the Lloyd Corum neighborhood. I mean, that's fine. I will invest in Brooks, but for bargain, Vidal. It's not a great class of running backs, as everyone knows.
I love Jalen Wright, but I'm not wishing injuries upon the other guys because there's a lot of fun running backs there in Miami, and they don't want to change what they're doing. I think is the clear thing there. They're like, we like what we're doing. We got the closest thing to that in the draft this year too, so we're just going to keep coming with you at speed, even if those other guys get hurt. And if they do, Jalen Wright would be the one for me. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks everybody for tuning in here. Peacock and Williamson, get those mailbag questions in for tomorrow's episode. Let us know what direction you want us to go here in the off season on our Wednesday mailbag episode at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Tag us on Twitter with those questions or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.